I always say that hosting becomes easier when your home works with you instead of against you. So you can create zones, like create like a clear drink station, for example, or a designated place for coats. Having someone, you want to make sure that people feel greeted and welcomed when they first come in. And surfaces should be styled. So yes, you may have to get rid of the mail and find another home for the daily clutter, but it doesn't have to be overwhelming. And mindset is everything. So hosting isn't about perfection, but it's creating an atmosphere where people feel comfortable.
We have got the best show today. My guest today is Sabine Hayes with Georgette Maurice out of Philadelphia. Now, why would we want to have a designer that's in Philadelphia? Because we have got the best ways on how to make your home comfortable and make you at ease when you're hosting this holiday season. We're getting really close to those holidays and bringing people in, and you've got all the stress and everything else. And Sabine is here to not only teach us how to make our homes pretty, but to make them practical and to not pull our hair out at the end of the day. Sabine, it is such a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for being here. I know we've had some technical difficulties, so we've been chatting a little bit about that, but we're here to talk about how to make your home feel as comfortable as possible and how feel matters just as much as it being pretty. Thank you so much, Sabine, for being part of this. And again, for being part of Welcome, Make Yourself at Home.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Sabine and I have been emailing back and forth and just getting super excited about today because she hasn't seen the real estate side. And I know I went to school to be a fashion designer. So I actually have that design background. So when I help clients, we actually stage their homes for them to help bring in as many buyers as possible. And so we know what it's like, that not only does it have to be pretty, but you have to live in it every day. How many times have you been at a model home? There's no toothbrushes. You don't see toothbrushes anywhere. Right. But please God, let me know that you are brushing your teeth every day. So what are some practical ways to bring emotional comfort into a space?
And you don't need construction for this necessarily to create a peaceful home. And so I would say start by focusing on elements that instantly shift the emotional tone of a room. So you want to think about things like lighting, color, scent, and most importantly, layout. Because the layout of a room could completely shift a room and how welcoming it feels, how it feels. Like if you're, for example, if you're immediately introduced to a room from the back of a sofa, that's going to feel different than maybe walking between two chairs. But it all goes back to intention. I talk about intentionality all of the time because intentionality is really the foundation of the building blocks of creating I'll say the home of your dreams, an intentional space that you want to live in.
Yeah, you were talking about intention. And as real estate agents, we tell our sellers every single day the most inexpensive way to change a home is paint. Paint makes the biggest difference. Now,
yes, agreed.
I'm of the age that I remember when you could buy a gallon of paint for $20, and it's a lot more expensive now. It's $80 it's $80 a gallon now.
It is.
But it's still, a color can change a room in a heartbeat.
It can. Yes, it absolutely can. And color is very psychological too. So I describe it as this: when you're like going back to your home being a book and each room is a different chapter, you want the different rooms to tell a story. Each room should have its own personality, but it should be cohesive. You don't want to walk into one room and then the next room you're like shocked. So you want it to be cohesive. You want each room to flow into the next room. And especially since paint is no longer $20, you want to make sure you're making the right decision when you're picking out different colors. And that's something that a lot of people homeowners get overwhelmed with is they go to the paint store, and even if you pick out like okay, a packet that's, oh, these colors will gel, and they will go, how do you know that those colors will be the right colors for your home? And it goes back to how do you want to feel in the home? And so that's one of the first questions that I ask my clients, because if you want your living room to feel very dramatic and intense, that's going to be very different than someone that wants their living room to feel like a lavender garden field. And having that intentionality is going to make a big difference in something like your color palette, for example, and the colors that you choose throughout your home.
Yeah, so we have several clients who've had different bedrooms be different colors. And we usually tell them, oh, do we have to paint the whole house? Like, not necessarily. You can't, if you want to detach from a home, that is a great way to do it, is especially in the day and age of grayish, and
Yes.
everything is grayish.
Yeah.
If you want to detach from a home, paint your home grayish. You will no longer be attached to it. It will be
Yes.
somebody else's home in a heartbeat. But one of the things, like when people talk about they have a baby blue or a robin's egg blue in one room, and then they have a not even a grass green, but a mint green in the other room, and then they have a lilac in the other room. I said, okay, you now have several different colors. How do we pull those together? Maybe it's all of the accent pieces are one color. Maybe all the furniture is smoky gray or a black or something along that line, that you can pull those rooms. While the rooms are painted different colors, you have a flow and an intentionality in each
Yes.
room.
And you have inspiration pieces too. Like, what are you inspired by? I've had clients that have been inspired by their travels, and they'll take photographs of different places, or they might have a piece of artwork that they bought from abroad, and will choose those colors from the artwork, and that'll determine the paint color. So we usually say that paint is usually the last part of the process, just because there's so many paint colors to choose from. But then sometimes the paint color is the first place to start. But oftentimes the biggest piece that has the most inspiration, the focal point, that's usually where you start from. And then from there, it's what catches your eye. Maybe you might have a sentimental piece like your grandmother's chair, which is an heirloom, and there's no other fabric that matches it. It's a unique piece and it has every color in existence. That might be a starting point, a focal point, and then you're drawing colors from there. And next thing, you have curtains, and then you have pillows, and you have artwork, or maybe the artwork is where you start from. And that could be where you choose your color palettes from. But yes, I always say focus on the feeling of how you want to feel in the room. And then after you start with how you want to feel in the room, then what are those pieces that are most important in that space, that are focal pieces, because that is also going to help you to create the flow of the design journey.
You're talking about flow. There's several people that also think not only flow, but you think layout. How do you place your furniture? And then, of course, you have the big feng shui discussion of
Yes.
that there's supposed to be water on the windowsill to go with flow, and then there's supposed to be money on as you're coming in the front door, so money's constantly being brought. So I know that there's pieces of that, and I know that a lot of designers do that as well. But what's something layout wise that people might want to consider when they're looking at a space?
You want to start with one, how is the space being used? Who's using the space? So, for example, we'll take a family room. A family room of a single person is going to be different than a family room of a family of four, a family of six. It's going to look completely different than an empty nester, for example, where it's just two people. So, who's going to be using the room? Is this a room that maybe you entertain in where you'll need overflow seating? So, I'll take a client, for example, we did their family room and they were a growing family of five. And so with three boys. And so boys tend to be very rambunctious. And this family room, and they love to entertain. So this family room was really the overflow. The kitchen is typically the hangout spot, but it was an open concept. So people overflowed into the family room, but it was also the movie room. They had a movie theater in the basement, but this was the gathering spot where after dinner you just relax. So the layout of that had to be open, it had to be welcoming, it had to be casual. So that affected the decisions of what type of furniture. So in that case, we did two sofas, two very comfortable sofas, but the way that we positioned them, like on a 90-degree angle, it created a space where it still felt cozy, where you didn't feel very far. If you're talking to someone, you didn't feel far, like you're screaming on the other end of the room. And then there was also a fireplace in that area. So when they don't have guests, people love to sit by the fireplace and maybe read a book, or maybe that might be dad's chair. Or so we added a cozy chair next to the fireplace. And then there were the seats that don't really get used often, but if you have like maybe 10 people in your family room, those might be the extra seats, but they still fit in. And then a couple ottomans like under some shelves, like we had a floating shelf under the TV. So all of that really affected, it didn't feel like, oh my goodness, there's so much furniture in here. But because the way that the furniture was laid out, whether there was one person or whether there was 10 people, it had the same feeling of, this is like a really comfortable and inviting space that I just want to sit down and watch a movie. So all of that, it told a story, but it worked for them. And so I usually say you want to ask yourself, what is the room being used for? Who's using it? How much seating do you need? And not everything has to match. Like, not everything has to match. We no longer need to buy like the set. Keep that in mind too.
You talked about that space and about how not only making it warm, comfortable, inviting, but also making it beautiful, but also it being a multifunctional space. In the places that we live now, in the areas that we live, we are using spaces for multiple purposes. So we're constantly looking at dining room tables being the homework station. Or, like
Yes.
you said, you'll have a living room that is supposed to be used for little boys, and you have to hide toys because
Right.
how many times do the
Yes.
toys migrate from the bedroom
Yes.
or the toy room? So you have to have a multifunctional place to put toys. So you're not stepping on Legos.
Yes.
Uh,
Which is very painful.
yeah, and or just like my office, I would kill for a closet in this office, but this office doesn't have one. So we used the little storage units behind us to create that storage. But this office is also our studio. So all of these spaces together are multifunctional spaces for all of our busy lifestyles. These are lessons that I believe you learn not only as a designer, but also as an Airbnb host. And then, because when people travel, they usually find things in their hotels or Airbnbs that they end up bringing home,
Yes.
especially functional pieces or pieces of art. Like you said, when they travel and everything's around that piece of art that they found, things that
Right.
they get to bring home. And so
Right.
you're helping all of us build homes that are purposeful, that work for us, but also give us that peace that goes along with it. So we already talked about, instead of bringing down walls and doing full renovations, being able to use layout, being able to use paint, You also talked about potentially using lighting and scent to make those impacts. How does that work?
Lighting is so key. I remember in art school, our lighting teacher was like, you could have the most gorgeous room, but if it's not well lit, nobody's going to see it. And when I talk about layered lighting, it's from multiple sources. So you have your general overhead lighting, which may be recessed lighting, or it might be a ceiling fixture. And then you may have your accent lighting, which may be a wall sconce. And then your task lighting, which may be a floor lamp. Each source of lighting serves a need. And so it goes back to what space is it? So if it's your bedroom, for example, you might have to think about, okay, do you even have any overhead lighting? Because there are some bedrooms that don't have overhead lighting. Because if you're laying in bed, you don't necessarily want to see bright lights shining, but you may have two lamps on each side of the bed. And then depending on the size of the bedroom, you may have a sitting area that may have a floor lamp right next to a chair in a corner. And just like a hotel, when you think about the hotel, one room in a hotel has five different lamps. It has a floor lamp, a table lamp, a wall sconce. Each of those serves a different purpose. I still remember a client that I had where the lighting made such a big difference. We changed her light fixtures, her chandelier, and we added some sconces, which can be rechargeable now, where you don't even need an electrician. But the biggest difference was she asked for dimmers for the chandelier. And so that was great because when her kids, she has three girls. So if the kids are using the dining room as a homework table, for example, they do need bright lighting. And her husband loves bright light, but she suffers from vertigo. And so she doesn't like bright lights because it hurts. It hurts literally. It makes her feel very ill. And as someone who suffered from vertigo, that is sometimes you just need to like close your eyes and go blackout. And so when we put the light fixture on dimmers, it was like she was so grateful because it made a difference. And then sometimes if she's having a dinner party and she wants it to feel very cozy, she's able to dim the lights. So with lighting, it goes back to how is the room going to be used? Who is it going to be used by? And how do you want to feel if you're in the room? Lighting a kitchen is going to be different than lighting a bedroom. The kitchen is very functional, so you need to see in order to cook. And so that does need to be bright. But then if you're hosting, maybe you want pendants over the island because maybe you don't need the overhead lighting to feel like intimate and cozy. So lighting plays a huge factor in a well-designed space.
Those are some excellent questions. How is the space going to be used? Especially when you're thinking, uh, one small example, you're in a kitchen. The last thing you want is the light to be behind you because then you're going to be
Right.
casting a shadow on what you're working on.
Yes.
But those are some amazing questions to ask to as you're getting into this, because in the day and age of Amazon and TikTok and all of these videos that are out there, people are seeing all of these rechargeable sconces and even the waterproof lights that you can take in the shower now.
Yes,
So
this is true.
completely different way of thinking about lighting. But we also talked about impacts of spaces like smells. And that's a huge thing as a real estate agent. We tell people all the time, people are sensitive to smells. So you have
They
to be
are.
really careful if you have a plug-in that you use in your house, uh, it may tell a buyer that, oh, they're hiding something. Why is the scent, or if the scent's too high, because you see a lot of those other ones that have intensity scales on them that you
Right.
can turn them up or turn them
Right.
down. So scents are things that, especially like when you're in real estate, you always want to either be baking cookies or baking bread because
Yes.
it makes a home feel warm and
It does.
inviting.
Yes, it does. One of my secrets actually, I love candles and diffusers, and I actually created my own candle line last year. I'm a little bit of an addict when it comes to scent, but one of my easiest go-tos, especially if I'm cooking, but then I'm having people come over, if you want the house to smell like the food, the aroma of the food, Any chef, like most restaurants, they don't even have scented candles because they want you to smell the aroma of the food. But one quick, and you guys probably use this as realtors too, is boiling cinnamon sticks and orange peels. Instantly, instantly it changes. Super easy. It doesn't smell like you're covering up anything because too, like I'm very cautious of harsh chemicals. And so you want to make sure anything that you're buying that it does have pure ingredients, and just be mindful if you have small kids, candles are not a great idea, but maybe diffusers. Like diffusers are make wonders in powder rooms where guests are going to be in the powder room. They're going to use the powder room, and you always want the powder room to smell good. A diffuser where it doesn't, no fire needed. You just need some reeds, and they could fit in with the decor. So that's like a multifunctional piece. But even with scent, that has to flow. So again, if you're having a living room that is like a cigar theme and a man cave, you're probably not going to have a floral candle or floral scent. But then if you're in the kitchen, you may have something that smells like lemons or herbs. And so scent drives memory too. Somebody could walk into your home and it could be I'm a big fan of natural scents. So it could feel like it brings back a memory of, oh my gosh, this reminds me of, I've had people that have said, oh my gosh, this reminds me of my dad. What I had one client that like got teary-eyed. She's I don't know why I'm crying. And this, I don't know why this scent reminds me of my dad and he passed away. And I was like, oh, wow. So it connects with memories too. So that is an important factor. That is an important factor.
Very much. We're getting ready, speaking of that, we're getting ready to go into the holidays. And this is the time of year where, as moms or as the host, we're ready to pull our hair out because we've got a laundry list of to dos and it doesn't seem to ever end.
Yes.
What are some practical ways that we can make hosting feel less stressful and more enjoyable?
That I love talking about this. Like my story, my late grandmother and my mom, they were both hosts. They both loved to host. My grandmother, even in her one bedroom Manhattan apartment, she always used to have friends over. Like we would spend Christmas over, and she always made people feel welcomed. And it wasn't that she lived in a penthouse. It was the simplicity of it, but she had that like elegant touch. So she would be the one that would be serving cocktails in her wine glasses that she doesn't use often, or serving coffee in mugs. But I always say that hosting becomes easier when your home works with you instead of against you. So you can create zones, like create like a clear drink station, for example, or a designated place for coats. Having someone, you want to make sure that people feel greeted and welcomed when they first come in. And surfaces should be styled. So yes, you may have to get rid of the mail and find another home for the daily clutter, but it doesn't have to be overwhelming. You want to think about ahead of time, think about extra seating that could be tucked away. Maybe you could have two chairs against the wall in the dining room, or two ottomans under a console table. But it's styled, but it doesn't feel cluttered. You could use trays. Like a big fan of trays. You could put all of the drink glass. I just feel like trays add so much structure. So like you could have, and yes, in containment. Yes, in one place. So, for example, if you have a drinking station, even if you're serving water bottles, you could just have water bottles on the tray. If you want to really kick it up a notch, you could take the labels off the water bottles. That makes it look a little bit more elegant. But yes, huge fan of trays. And then setting the table ahead of time, that dramatically improves the flow. And mindset is everything. So hosting isn't about perfection, but it's creating an atmosphere where people feel comfortable. If you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off, then people are going to feel that. And it doesn't mean that everything's going to be like go the way that you had it in your mind. But if people see you smiling, if you're able to give people hugs when they walk in, or maybe introduce people to one another if they're not familiar, that's going to make a big difference. So when you focus on connection rather than like performance, I feel like that's when hosting becomes joyful instead of stressful.
That's exactly. Energy is the key because
Huge.
if things are not going to go perfectly,
Yeah, there's
something's
always
going to
something that's
go
going wrong.
wrong.
Oh yeah.
But is it going to be the story that everybody remembers and laughs about later? That's the key. I always tell my kids, blessed are the flexible, for they'll bend and they won't break.
Yes.
So
Yes.
if the dog yanks the rolls off the counter and runs off with them, oh, we don't have rolls.
Yep.
You know what? We have bread.
Exactly.
And it was sandwich bread. And we'll talk about that buttered sandwich bread for the rest of our days.
Yeah, I remember, I think it was last Thanksgiving we hosted, and I completely forgot. And I have a big family, so it was like, it's always buffet style, not
Mhm,
sit down, because
mhm.
there's just too many of us. And I forgot sternos.
No.
And yeah, I have a warmer, I have an oven, but we
Mhm.
had so much food, I couldn't put everything in the oven to stay warm. And so it felt like a disaster. But that just means that we ate sooner
Mhm.
and everybody still had a great time.
That's key.
And so those are things where if you could just put a smile on your face and make people feel welcome, even something as simple, are you okay? And then like even the way that we had it set up, we live in a split level, all of the kids were downstairs.
Oh, yeah.
And they have a TV, we have a TV down there, we have a craft game room.
Yep.
So they were able to still like there was different zones. So people didn't feel like, oh, we're in this one space, we're all doing the same thing. There were intentional zones where it was like, okay, they could play card games, they could watch the football game down here, the adults could watch football upstairs. We have a banquette in the kitchen, so people can feel like they're in a cafe in there. But everyone was still in the same home, but we had different zones. So people felt like they could walk around and just feel comfortable. And just walking around and, hey, do you need anything? Or you need a drink?
Yeah.
Something like that is a huge difference.
Oh,
So
yeah. And if it is family, sometimes we have a list of to dos because how many of us are, what can I do to help? How do I help?
exactly.
And I know growing up that it was like my grandmother was cooking, my mom was cooking, my aunt was cooking, but then we were washing dishes when we were done,
Yes.
and the men were watching football. So
Yeah.
we always said, hey, here's a chore list of things that need to get done. If you really want to help, jump in on these
Right.
things and keep a running tab.
Yes.
And then
Because there's
that way-
always family members that want to help. Like
Oh,
they
yeah.
don't feel comfortable unless they're helping.
Exactly.
So yeah,
So
give them a task.
just because you're the host doesn't mean you have to do everything.
Exactly. Exactly.
So these are small mindset shifts that people need to take into consideration. Do zones, keep things together, allow people to be comfortable. And if you've got a to-do list, write it down and let the family members come in and help. These are just the small shifts that take a lot of that weight off of you and make it a comfortable day for everybody.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed.
Are there ways that homeowners can design spaces so they're both beautiful and livable?
Absolutely. I think we touched on multifunctional design, which is really a core of what I do. And I always say beauty and livability can absolutely coexist. There's no point in having a functional space if it's not pleasing to the eye, because then you're not going to want to be there. But then if it's all beauty and aesthetics, but it doesn't serve your needs, then that's a problem as well. So thinking about furniture that serves more than one purpose, flexible layouts, as we talked about. So things that can be easily moved around. If you are hosting a dinner party, yeah, you may have to like shift some chairs around, but create like groupings of furniture so it still feels like people are able to have a conversation. And really zones that support your daily routines. So thinking about the kitchen's probably one of the most functional and busiest rooms in a home. And so a kitchen should flow very well. And that could start with organization. So organization works best when it blends with design. So think about hidden storage, like you were talking about the cabinets and the console that you have in the back. You can do intentional baskets, beautiful trays. So decor that doubles as function. So you could have and that's when I say thinking ahead. And I'll give you an example. Like in our lower level of our home, it's just one big space. And so we could have easily filled it with furniture, but I had to think ahead of, okay, my daughter loves to do crafts, and I was tired of doing having the kids do homework on the dining table. I wanted to give them their own area. So then we took one of our old dining tables, and that became the craft area slash homework station. And then with that, I knew we were going to have a lot of homework papers, but then also books. So that also doubled as our library because we put two bookcases. So that's where all of the books, the homework papers are organized in family and magazine trays so that you could easily just throw the homework paper in, or anything that was paper related could easily be thrown in the magazine cubbies. So that all takes like planning and thinking of like, how am I going to use this space? And then there's a TV watching area, which is very different than like the craft homework area. So what do we need in that space? How many people do we want to see? So comfortable layouts and zones where when your family wakes up in the morning, when you get home from work, when the kids get off the school bus, like how are people moving throughout the home? Or if you're an empty nester and maybe you're retired, what are some things that you do throughout the day that help you move around the space better? Maybe you've picked up a new hobby. So maybe you have an extra room, like the bonus room is now maybe like your new office or your new craft room. That's going to look different for everyone, but those are questions you have to think about, is like, how am I going to use this space? So,
Yeah, and we talked about if you have a family of four boys, that having a place to put things or hide them
or
in
hide them.
in those spaces. How do we as busy people stay organized without losing style? Is like that we have a place to put the mail so the mail doesn't get overwhelming, or that you have a sorting place, or do you have an idea of timeline? It's like if I haven't if I haven't read my magazine in a week, then it doesn't need to stay here because I'm going to get another one in the next week. So
Right.
I'll have to catch up back then. So I have to be intentional with my time. And that was when you talked about zones and using furniture, each piece of furniture as multi-purpose. Those are the ways that you were describing that I felt as the little bit of design that I do for people to how to live. Because how many times as a kid did we go into the powder room and your mom said, "Don't touch them towels. Those towels are for
Exactly.
guests."
Exactly.
It was like, why are we having it if I can't use it? Use the things, and how do we use it? Make it pretty and keep
Make
it
it
pretty,
pretty.
but
Yeah,
it be functional as well.
exactly.
How does Sabine blend design with purpose and hospitality? How do you do it?
I would say my grandmother and my mom are definitely my inspiration. That's probably why I named my firm after them. And I understood serving from them. So I see what I do as serving people by creating environments that support their clarity, that support their peace and their joy. And because it's more than just, oh, I just want to give you a pretty home. It's how does your home work for you? And so it requires discovery, where I'm discovering the client and I'm like trying to find out more about them and how I could serve them. But then at the same time, for myself, I love to create. I always see my home as like a haven. And I love to, and I feel like the older I get, like I'm more of a homebody. I become more of a homebody. I'm like, I'm good staying home. I like to go out, but I like being home. And that's what I wish for clients. Like for you to enjoy and being home. But not only that, but for you to enjoy having people in your home, and it doesn't have to be overwhelming. So I love being home. It re-energizes me. I love that my family loves being home, that it's a place that's peaceful. And I have two kids. So yes, not everything is like perfect and chaotic, but I think creating those, having that feeling of home being sacred, like a safe place, helps. And then at the same time, being able to have people over and entertain them, whether it's a dinner party or whether it's just a couple girlfriends that we're having cocktails or we're having coffee. And so that, I feel like that is what's important to me. And so I think home is sacred. Home is sacred. You have to love being home. And it starts with purchasing the right house, but then once you have that, it's how do I make this house that I fell in love with now personal? I love doing that.
That
That's my
that leads into exactly what are the biggest mistakes that people make when they're trying to refresh a room or redo a room?
Oh my gosh. And I have a couple friends that are wardrobe consultants, and this probably they'll probably say the same thing with their industry, is overbuying and people buying random things because it looks great. With them, they'll probably say, just because it's on the mannequin doesn't mean you need it in your closet. You already have five things that look like it. um, I've had my friend do that, and I'm like, I don't have blue shirts. And you have five blue shirts. And then I look at my closet, I'm like, oh, I do have five blue shirts, and they look very similar.
That's oh, and God forbid that it shows up on TikTok or Instagram, and I'm
I
like, oh my God,
know.
that looks so great. Not gonna look great on me. Oh, oh my word.
I know. And people do the same thing with homes too. It's, oh, I want my home to look like this Pinterest picture. I want my home to look like my girlfriend's home or my neighbor's home. Oh my gosh, they had this latest TV. I need one too. So I think some of the biggest mistakes that people do is they start with decor and not intention. So people end up buying random things, hoping to fix a room, but they haven't really defined, how does the room, what does the space function or feel? So all of those questions that we talked about, intentionality, they haven't asked themselves with, I don't know how this space is. It's just a bonus room. I wasn't expecting it, especially when you're going from like a small home and now you're going to a larger home. You feel like you need to fill every nook and cranny, and that takes time. And you want to start by like decluttering, like getting rid of the things that no longer serve you. And that's ongoing. It's not just like a one time, like, oh, I've decluttered and I'm good for the next 10 years. That's like an ongoing, what do I no longer need? And just because you see something doesn't mean you need it. Whether, especially with if it's on sale and you feel like, or this is what's trending. But you have to ask yourself, like, do you need it? Do you really need it? What function is it going to serve? Asking those things.
One of the things I do, this is just a me personally, I do it every January. I spin my hangers so the hangers are hanging backwards. So instead of this way, they're hanging this way. And
Oh,
if I haven't worn it by the next January, then I haven't worn it in a year. And that means I don't need it.
ah,
It needs to bless somebody else. So
yeah,
I've
that's
now
a good
I
idea.
it does I do switch out summer and winter because I have a very small closet that I have to share with my husband. So I do switch things out, but if my hanger is still this way and I haven't worn it, then I'm able to part with it that way. And that's a good thing to keep
That's
me
a great
interested.
strategy.
So one of the last questions I wanted to ask you, and I've done this with my mom, is that again, set the intention in a room, but then I asked her, I said, okay, what do you like? What kind of style do you like? And I make her, because she just wanted to buy random furniture. And I was
Mhm.
like, okay, what should people avoid buying or doing when they're refreshing a room or even building a room? So we talked about start with intention, but then maybe have a design idea of where you're going, and then you
Yes.
can pick pieces from there.
Mhm. Yeah, so figuring out if you have a room that is already has furniture, it's going to be a different approach than starting with no furniture, like a blank canvas. Now, with both, whether you have furniture or whether it's just an empty room, you're still going to ask yourself the same questions. What is this room? Who's using this room? How is it going to be used? And then from there, that's going to determine what furniture piece is. Now, if you already have furniture in a room, if the room is already it's lived in, it's used, you just need it refreshed, the first place you're going to start is decluttering and then getting rid of the things that no longer serve you. And even when you are moving, oh my goodness, you don't realize how many things you have until you move. And a lot of times when you're moving, I know, like, I talk from like personal experience on that. And then when you move into a new home, the stuff that served you in the old home sometimes doesn't even work in the new home. So you still are going through that decluttering process. But then after that, then you want to from there you want to start choosing a layout, and then your color palette, for example, and then key pieces that now support your intention. And so, like, working with a designer, for example, that's something that we could do together, is sit down and really discuss what is your intention, and then how do we fulfill that intention with furniture, with colors, with window coverings, with lighting, and all of those things,
Is there
so you have
anything?
clarity.
Yeah, you said trendy things. So would those be things that maybe you should avoid buying, or overfilling a room? That would definitely be one.
Yes, overfilling a room. And not that I like, people talk about minimalist, are you a maximalist? I would not consider myself a minimalist. I do love things, but I've come to the point where everything that I have, I want everything that I have to serve a purpose. So I love a gallery wall. I love a gallery wall where I have one wall and it has all these different frames. But all of those frames, they tell a story. Like, I literally have a gallery wall in my dining room where it's monochromatic. It's in the browns. They're all like brown tones. Some of them are silhouettes from my mother's homeland. Like, I have an old map of the West Indies because I love geography. I have a sketch that my daughter did of like my I gave her a picture of my grandparents' farm in Haiti, and she took a sketch and she like sketched it, and that was in black and white, so I framed it. I think my husband has a silhouette of an oak tree that reminds him of he's from his parents, his mom's side is from Virginia, that remind him of his time with his grandparents in Virginia. So all of them, a stranger would walk by and it would be meaningless, but for us it all tells a story. But then in other spaces, like my living room, I purposely don't have it cluttered because that's like the adult space. That's the first room that people see when they walk into the home. So every piece that we have in there is functional, and anything extra does not go in that room. So knowing what each space is going to be used for, and then figuring out what no longer works in that space. So then you have, I feel like less, I wouldn't say less is more, but less is usually more because it gives you peace. When you have clutter, and when I say clutter, it doesn't necessarily mean things. It means if something is unfinished, like those unfinished projects that you're like, oh, I thought this artwork was going to work, but now I have to return it. Or I bought way too many throws, so now there's 5 throws on that sectional. Things like that. And it's okay to have more than one throw on your sofa, but if they're all the same, or if it just looks like too much, then it creates stress in your mind. Like, you're just like, it just feels like so much. It now takes brain space in your mind, and that could lead to stress. Going through and figuring out what no longer serves you, and then coming up with a plan from there, which is what we could help you with. So, the idea, or my goal as a designer, is to bring clarity, which I feel like then translates into peace. So,
Clutter is not just what is in your house, but it also is in your head. So if
Absolutely.
it's that thing that you've got to constantly keep doing, if you have to constantly remind yourself to do this, or if that project you haven't finished, that's mind clutter as well. So
Yes.
that, Sabine, I can't say thank you enough. Oh, we will have all of Sabine's socials attached to this podcast. You can find Sabine. We do want to tell you that Sabine did put out her new 20-page designer guide on the joy of hosting, that we'll keep that link on our podcast as well, and also on our blog, so you guys can pick up her Georgette Maurice. And I don't know if I shared with you, but a little bit of connection. I took French in high school, and I had to pick a name to start off with, and my name was actually
Georgette, which is a very uncommon name. Like, it's a classic old name. That excites me because I don't hear that name often, and when I do hear that name, I'm like, ooh. So that's amazing.
Thank you so much, Sabine, for being part of Welcome, Make Yourself at Home. I so greatly appreciate you being here, and thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun.
Thanks for joining me on Make Yourself at Home. I hope you found insights and inspiration to help you navigate your real estate journey with confidence. Don't forget to follow, subscribe, and share this show with your friends, because everyone deserves to feel at home. Until next time, stay informed, stay empowered, and keep making moves that matter.